It was unprecedented, an all-female concert tour. Critics said it could not be done. They said nobody would come to see an all-woman show.
I mean, for a long time, I only knew men in the music business.
But they proved everyone wrong.
I waited 20 years to see this happen.
It was called the Lilith Fair, and it swept the country off its feet.
I have something very different to bring to the party than my male counterpart.
They became the sirens of song in the summer of '97.
Part of it was just a really selfish desire to gather together a lot of the wonderful musicians out there.
Sheryl Crow, Jewel, Fiona Apple, Joan Osborne, the Indigo Girls. They all signed on to the tour that would become the hottest ticket of the summer of '97 and would land a place in music history. Tonight, the ultimate backstage pass, a compelling and intimate look at the women behind the music of Lilith Fair.
You dream it and then you do it. And that's what she did.
It was one of the most successful music events of the decade. Over 500,000 people came. It grossed over $15 million. It was called the Lilith Fair. But this is more than the story of a successful concert tour. It's the story behind the remarkable artists who contributed to making music history. And it was the brainchild of singer-songwriter Sarah McLachlan. Sarah McLachlan's charmed career in music began in high school. She was discovered at the age of 17 in her hometown of Halifax, Nova Scotia.
It was the first time we'd played as a band, and it was also the first time that Mark Jowett from Network saw me and wanted to sign me. But I was 17 and again, barely passing high school, so my mother had a fit.
Despite her mother's fear for her daughter's future, Sarah signed a 5-record deal. Her career took off without a hitch. Her first CD, Touch, sold 500,000 copies, but she still wanted to prove to her parents that her career in music was not just a childish whim.
When I came home almost a year later and I had a finished CD that I handed to them, I think that's really when they turned their mind around.
Anything Sarah touched seemed to turn to gold or platinum. With the release of her third album, Fumbling Towards Ecstasy, selling 3 million copies, Sarah went from being a Canadian sensation to a player on the American music charts. But that did not spare her the frustration of being a woman in an industry dominated by men.
If you had asked me 3 years ago if I thought there was sexism in the industry, I would have, oh no, I don't think so. I mean, it's very naive. But that was before I had really achieved any real success, where I was in any kind of league where I could, you know, hit a wall. And when I got up to that point where I was actually starting to get radio play in America, I was continually hitting that wall.
Sarah was not alone. Other female artists say they were hitting the same wall of sexism in the music industry.
I remember particularly going to one radio station and they said to me, hey, we added your record. They call it an ad when they put your record on the radio. We added your record this week instead of Sheryl Crow. And I said, are you foolish?
I've always gotten a strange reaction from promoters, as if it'd be impossible to sell a ticket with too many females.
But Sarah McLachlan refused to believe the unspoken rule that female performers could not play on the same bill.
It's existed for a long time that, you know, has really very little relevance in our society anymore, and I really wanted to try and, you know, break down those myths.
So Sarah set out to prove her point. On her 1995 tour, she invited Paula Cole, another woman artist, to be her opening act.
On that tour, she encountered opposition, thinking it wasn't commercially viable, that we would be set up to be competitive against one another. And we were both kind of infuriated and surprised at such antiquated sexism. And also, we both realized that there's a tremendous vacancy for this. So she took that seed and made a beautiful thing out of it.
I can't go so and neither I have wings to fly.
Sarah decided to build on the success of her tour with Paula Cole and create an all-female music tour, a tour that threatened to prove the Old Boys Network wrong. Everyone told Sarah it would be impossible to pull off, but she took the idea to her managers and agent to see if they would help her bring her dream to life.
There were a lot of detractors, you know, from promoters not believing to other agents.
What did you do to them?
In essence, we became like this, you know, little train that could.
An all-female festival was a new twist on the male-dominated summer music tours like Lollapalooza and Horde.
They don't include many women at all, so I don't think women are really given the chance to perform in that realm.
Sarah and her team were determined to create a summer music tour for women artists on the same scale as a Lollapalooza.
I felt there was such a great diversity of music being made by women and very few places that you could go see that kind of music.
This groundbreaking idea for an all-female headliner tour needed a meaningful name.
I got the name from a girlfriend of mine, and the first word out of her mouth was Lilith. She explained to me that she was Adam's first wife before Eve. Basically, this is in Jewish mythology, and she was made of the same stuff that he was and wanted to be treated equally, yet he refused her that, and so she took off. Said, fine, I don't need this.
Sarah and her team pulled their artists' wish lists. They envisioned a lineup of the best female performers out there.
The idea of the festival itself was an easy sell to the other artists.
The artists began to sign on. Sheryl Crow, Fiona Apple, Jewel, Joan Osborne, the Indigo Girls. A blockbuster lineup was beginning to form, but there were still those in the music industry who were convinced the Lilith Fair would be a flop.
There were one or two promoters in the beginning of the process who staunchly fought us, you know, who had horrible names for what Lilith is. You know, we heard Breast Fest, we heard Est Fest, I heard the Other Bush Tour, I heard Lesbo-Palooza. You know, I heard them all.
Despite the resistance, they moved forward with the festival. Lilith Fair was boasting such a blockbuster roster of female artists that the press couldn't help but take notice. Soon Lilith Fair was the darling of the media.
It seemed like it was an idea whose time had come. I mean, we've been talking about the Year of Women in Music for years now, and still there felt like a freshness there. There felt like something exciting.
Then on July 5th, 1997, a hot summer day in the Pacific Northwest, one woman's dream, the Lilith Fair, a dream no one thought possible, came true.
I really didn't know what to expect, or didn't have very many expectations, and you know, it kept snowballing.
Even the major networks were there to cover the opening.
Now, some business types said, oh, that'll never work. Nobody will buy tickets to all women all summer long. Well, 20,000 people showed up today, and the Lilith Fair will visit 35 cities.
I waited 20 years to see this happen.
Me, I've been satisfied, just a little tenderness. Whoa, with you.
Pat Benatar, a true pioneer of women in rock, performed at Lilith Fair as a special guest. When she first hit the music scene in the 1970s, she says she had to fight every step of the way.
You know, it just takes me back to being 26 and standing there with your tapes and trying to explain to all these record executives and everybody else what you wanted to do, what you had envisioned happening for females, and every single person saying absolutely not, patting you on the head saying go home. You know, that's very nice, but females don't sell large venues and they can't sell records on their own, and the whole list.
Next, Sheryl Crow's rough and winding road to superstardom.
At rock bottom, I really wanted God to take me out of it.
Then the darker days of Jewel's past.
I didn't want to wake up in the morning. I didn't have any passion at all.
When Behind the Music continues.